Hey guys, Mr. T here, just doing a quick video on exercise 4C.1, which is about finding Pearson's correlation coefficient, R, and also talking about what it is. So far, we've only described the correlation between two variables in terms of the direction, if it's going up to the right or down to the right, linearity, whether it looks like a straight line, strength, how tightly the data points go with a trend, and whether there's outliers and causality. Clearly, this is just words, this is not mathematical yet, so now is the time that we go into the mathematics of it. So ultimately, we measure the correlation between two variables with something we call Pearson's correlation coefficient. Its symbol is lowercase r. Now, Pearson's correlation coefficient, r, is a number between -1 and 1. It ranges from the low end of -1 all the way to the high end of 1. So it can be any number in between those two. -1 indicates a perfect negative correlation between two variables. So what I mean by perfect is like perfectly strong. And 1 indicates a perfect positive correlation between the two variables. And 0 indicates there's no correlation between the two variables at all. So the best illustration of this is this chart in your textbook. I've got this chart here. So if R is 1, the data points lay perfectly on a line that's going in a positive direction. See if R, or Pearson's, is between 0.95 and 1, then it's very strong, but you can see there's a little bit of wiggle there. And then 0 to 0.5, very weak, so really no correlation there at all. You should really use these actual terms, okay? This is what you should say. When you find a Pearson's and it's between these two numbers, you would say very strong in your test and in the exam. So really, something like this should go on your cheat sheet, although I don't think you need this whole chart. You can just go with half of it. Because really, the only difference between the left half here, which is the positive, and the right half here, which is the negative, is just the direction the lines go. But these numbers mean exactly the same thing. So I think you could save a lot of space on your cheat sheet by only getting half of this and understanding if the numbers are negative, that just means the dots are going in the down to the right direction. But that's up to you, okay? So something like this definitely needs to go on your cheat sheet so that you can interpret the Pearson's numbers that you find. If it's between 0.87 and 0.95, then you would say strong positive, all right? Now, how do we find Pearson's correlation coefficient? You can find it on your graphics calculator. For this whole topic, just like you hammered TVM solver with finance, you're going to hammer this whole topic with the use of something we call stat and one edit, the stat editing function of your graphics calculator. Whenever you're asked to enter data into your calculator, that always means this. So these instructions here are what you do when you want to enter data in your graphics calculator. The first thing you need to do is to make sure that the diagnostics are on. So you do that by pressing second and 0. It's pretty hard to see on my screen here, this video, but over your 0 button on your graphics calculator, it says catalog in blue letters. So that's what you're trying to get at. You're pressing second, 0, and you have a whole list of entries here. So you should scroll down to find the diagnostic on entry, but that's going to take forever because there's a lot of entries here. So you can actually skip down to the D entries by pressing the X to the -1 button. See, X to the -1, you've got a green D there. If you press that, it skips straight down to the D entries, so now that saves you a lot of clicking, and you can go straight to diagnostic on. So now you press enter on the diagnostic on entry. Diagnostic on appears, so now you press enter again, and it says done. You've turned diagnostics on. That's the first thing that you should always make sure, right? Sorry, my cat's stuck in the kitchen, so I'm going to leave him until I finish this video. You should only need to do this diagnostic on once every time you reset your calculator, but I'm showing you here just in case, all right? So now what you do is you press stat and select one edit by pressing enter, and you're going to see a table with a set of columns, or lists really, that's why they're called L1, L2, etc. Labeled L1, L2, L3 at the top. It's best practice to always put your X data, the independent variable, in L1, and your Y data, the dependent variable, in list 2. To enter the data, you just type the number into a cell and press enter. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In list 2, I'm also going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my X data is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My Y data is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This should be a perfect positive relationship. So keep that in mind. Now just be careful. Let's pretend that you've been doing a bunch of statistics and you've got a series of numbers in a list and you want to get rid of them. It's going to take forever if you delete them one at a time. So if you want to clear out a column to put new data in, go to the list label like I've done here, L3, and press the clear button. It's going to say L, the number, and then a little cursor with a flashing cursor. At the bottom, you press enter to tell it that you want it cleared. To clear the list, please don't press the delete button, because if you press the delete button, it deletes the whole list. See, I've got no L3 anymore, and I don't want you scared and freaking out because you did that. So just in case, to get it back, you press second delete, which is insert in blue. And then if you want to label it L3 again, you can see L3 in blue here. So I'd press second 3, L3, and press enter. I got it back. But yeah, just avoid pressing delete. Go to the top of the list and press clear if you want to clear the whole thing. So now once your data of interest has been entered into StatEdit, you can do many things with it. One of those things is to find Pearson's correlation coefficient, which is what this presentation is about. So first, you enter your X and Y data into StatEdit, which I've done, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once the data is entered, you press Stat again, but now you press the right button, the little cursor here, to select Calc at the top of the screen. So I'm going to press Stat. We use StatEdit to enter the data, but now I want to hit Calc here. So I press the right button, and now I select for linreg by pressing enter. I'm going to go for linreg AX plus B. I just need to close the door to the kitchen. He's getting out. So select for linreg, enter. Now, if you have a new calculator, an up-to-date one, this isn't what you're going to see. You're going to see a menu that says X list, and you need to tell it where the X data is by pressing second and then the number. You need to tell it that the X data was in L1. So you press second 1 to tell it that the X data is in L1. It asks you the Y list data, so you press second number 2 for L2. You ignore the frequency list and store reg EQ. If there's something beside it, you clear it. Okay, they should be clear. I've got an old calculator here on the screen. So if you've got an old calculator, what you do is you press second 1 for L1, then you hit the comma button, and second 2 for L2. And that's a very basic way of doing what the new calculators do. The new calculators nicely ask you to check where your X data is and where your Y data is. The old calculator is just like, I'm going to do a linreg, and you work it out for yourself. So what you're telling it here is you need to tell it the X data is in L1, the Y data is in L2. So once you've done that, if you've got a new calculator, you select calculate at the bottom with enter. I've got an old calculator, so press enter here, and this screen will appear. Linreg, y is equal to ax plus b. That should look familiar to you from the linear relationships test. And it says a is 1, b is 0, r squared, and r. And Pearson's correlation coefficient is r. Now just be careful, if r squared and r don't appear in this list, that means you need to turn diagnostic on again from the instructions here. Alright, but I showed you at the start that you should just turn diagnostic on anyway as part of the instructions. So this r here at the bottom, that's Pearson's correlation coefficient. It tells you the direction and the strength of the correlation between the variables whose data I entered into list 1 and list 2. So this is telling me there's a perfect positive relationship between the data that I entered here, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is what you should expect, because they're both going up in a perfectly straight line. Okay, so R is 1. So now I need to show you an example The botanical gardens have been trying a new chemical to control the number of beetles infesting their plants. The results of one of their tests are shown in the table below. It's asking us, can you find Pearson's correlation coefficient for this data? So if I want to find Pearson's correlation coefficient, I need to enter the data. That's done through stat edit. I've got existing data here. I don't want to take forever to delete those, so I press clear, enter. Second list, clear, enter. Enter the data, my X data. How do I know it's the X data? Well, we're trying to control the number of beetles, so this chemical is killing the beetles. So the number of beetles is going to be dependent on the amount of chemical. So the X data is going to be the quantity of chemical. 2, 5, 6, 3, 9, 11, 6, 4, 6, 3. I've entered the data. Now if you remember from this step here, first you enter the data, now you press stat again, press right for the calc menu, select for linreg. I have an old calculator, so I need to tell it L1, L2. If you have a new calculator, a menu comes up that says X list, tell it L1 there. It says Y list, tell it L2 there. Ignore the other two entries, they should be clear. Select calculate. At the bottom, I press enter. And that tells me that R, Pearson's correlation coefficient, is negative 0.8589. So I'm going to answer that question. A, R equals negative 0.8589 to 4 decimal points. And then B, describe the correlation between the quantity of chemicals and the number of surviving lawn beetles. The correlation is negative and well, I might have to be more formal about it. The correlation between the amount of chemical in grams and the number of surviving beetles is negative and, well, it's 0.85, so that's between 0.8, no, that's between 0.0, yeah, it's between 0.7 and 0.87, so it's moderate. Moderate is, I'm going to start with the moderate, is moderately strong, and negative. Basically, the more chemical, the less beetles. Alright, so that is using the graphics calculator to find Pearson's correlation coefficient from data that you've entered in the graphics calculator, and also interpreting it using the chart from your textbook, which I suggest you chuck in a cheat sheet, but only half of it to save space. Okay, hopefully that helps you out, and I'll see you on the next video.